For the last 3 years, between recording segments of the D6 generation, Russ, Craig, and Rafe have had various conversations that have spanned the interests of gamerdom worldwide. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, The Lost Chapters.
All right, well, welcome everybody to our Lost Chapter segment for this time.
Decaf.
I said latte.
You.
What is this?
Sorry,
this is not a latte.
Crazy.
This is not a latte.
This Dunkin' Donuts is usually never
Ranger,
this crazy.
why can't we go to Starbucks? Seriously, why can't we? I want to order in Italian. Let's be clear.
I had no idea. I had no idea what you guys were doing right there. What's the normal coffee you get at a Dunks, Craig?
I get a large decaf iced coffee with half the normal ice, extra milk, and 5 Splenda, because I got me my sweet tooth.
Extra milk, 5 Splenda. That stuff will kill you, dude. They say
it's got the same chemical content as bleach.
No,
diet soda.
No, they've said that if they inject like half a liter into a rat, it kills them.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So if you inject double my weight of Splenda into me, it will kill me too.
Right. If you inject half a liter of water into a rat, I think it might kill him too. I'm not sure.
That's like okay. I see where you're going with that, Russ. You made me nervous for a minute there.
Right.
What about you, Russ? What do you?
I thought you suddenly flipped.
What's that?
What do you get at Dunks?
Dunks. I usually get coffee light, so little extra cream in there. That's it. No sugar. No sugar for me in my coffee. No.
All right. I get one of two things. I either get a small hot coffee, skim milk, and sugar, or a small iced coffee, skim milk, and sugar. I like iced coffee in the middle of winter too.
So we're going to talk about coffee today.
Yes. What kind of beans to get?
Because the key is not to drink too much coffee before you start modeling, because then your hands shake.
That's right.
And then you're like, I can't paint the eyeball.
Old Andy's got the old handshakes. You see that?
Mm-hmm. What? Is he getting the shakes?
All right, paint pots.
Is that what we're talking about? Paint pots today?
Paint pots. We got, for whatever reason, like, I don't know, in the past month or 6 weeks, we received not just one, not just two, but like a bunch, like a good 5, 6, I don't know, my memory, of asking us what kind of paint pots we use. So we've already done the main segment, I don't know what number, how to paint. So this is going to be a little bit of a blending, pun intended.
Oh, I love how you did that. That's amazing, dude.
2 drums and a cymbal fall off a building.
Right.
On the actual technical details of the paint pots we use and the hobby trays and blah, blah, blah. And then Craig will talk to you about how, and we'll add our 2 cents on how we paint the small scale ships and vehicles.
Yeah, like what are we doing for Dystopian Wars? What makes them different from anything else? That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. So
assuming we have time and Dunks doesn't kick us out, because you never know.
So who wants to go first?
By the way, they're a sponsor, because we're mentioning them an awful lot. Just saying.
We should get money.
Right.
Who wants to go first?
Let Russ go first.
Okay. Right. What are we talking about, though?
Paint pots.
Okay. Well, I'm
what
probably,
paint pots do you use
of the 3 of us, I'm probably the most broad paint user. I like all 3 of the major brands. I like GW, P3, and Vallejo.
That's right. I forgot. You do like to use.
I use them all. In fact, my Blazing Suns are mostly Vallejo with some P3 and GW. I think that basically, here's my thoughts. So with the Vallejo paints, the signature thing about them, and if you're like, what is he saying with this word Vallejo? Vallejo are the paints, when you look in the hobby store, they're the ones in those funky little bottles with the curvy caps that look like droppers.
Eyedroppers.
Right. So the weird thing about this paint is, you can't paint right out of the pot. You need to drop them out of the pot and into either a mixing tray or a piece of paper or whatever you're going to paint from. Paper plate with wax coating. Don't do paper, because it'll go through and get in your table and your mom will kill you. So what I normally do, what I like about this is it forces you to drop it out. And the bottles close extremely well. And I've never, ever, ever, and I have some old ones, had a Vallejo bottle dry out on me, ever.
Yep.
They're the most probably reliable
guaranteed
bottle.
Not to.
Yeah, the most reliable bottle of paint. So you're definitely the best value. And they're nice and full. There's a lot of paint in there. So even though you're thinking, I got to drip 2 or 3 drops out to paint every time, the difference is you close it right back up. With a conventional paint pot like Privateer or GW, you leave the top open while you paint. And all of a sudden, while that's happening, the paint's drying out a little bit. You're exposing it to air. It's really not a good thing to do. And good painters will say, I don't do that. I scoop a little bit out on the pot. Well, that's the right way to do it. But, of course, it's very tempting for us rookie painters to kind of scoop things out of there. So Vallejo will prevent you from that bad habit. Now, The problem with Vallejo, I like their range. They have an awesome range of very, very subtle shades. So I really like their greens and their military colors. Especially they have an official line of Flames of War paints that are phenomenal for that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
all the different shades of tan, the greens and the grays.
And they're keyed to the specific nations, so you know what they're going to look like because they're historically accurate.
Of course, I used to be very much the painter that was like, I don't need all that crap. I just need the 4 primary colors, and I can mix anything. And that's a great angle until you try to come back and paint more of the same army.
Until you try to repeat that paint scheme.
You're like, oh, which shade of gray was it? 2 parts black to 3 parts white? What the hell is they doing? So so now I've gotten to the point where I like to have the actual shade mixing done, and where they have blending shades built into the paint range. I know they get you a little more money on that, but it really is a nice benefit. So
I agree.
I like them. Now the problem I have with Vallejo is coverage is probably, I don't know if I want to say the worst of the bunch, but it's the runniest paint. Which can be good because good painters will say I like to work up in layers and paint more than one time, and that's great if that's you. But if you're more the sort of the impatient painter like I am a little bit, and you like a slightly thicker coat that gets on in one pass or maybe 2 at the most, Vallejo white you'd be painting all day to get good coverage over black primer.
White's rough with almost anything,
right? But particularly Vallejo. So it's not a good base coating color for me. I like it more for the different shades, but I like it. So I do.
I'm going to let you keep going on, but what's hilarious is I am 100% in the opposite camp. But I'm going to let you keep going.
Well, you should try this sometime. Take 3 of it out and try it. So then with
no, I believe you, but for the very reasons you don't like it is why I like it.
No, that's what I'm saying. If you like painting in layers and thin coats where you can't, because the problem with thicker paints is you can very easily accidentally put too much on and then make brush strokes built into your model and that kind of stuff. So if you want a very smooth, blended look, Vallejo is a very strong paint. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, the P3 line, Privateer Press, I like them mostly for their primary colors. So they're great with two-tone simple shading, like the Signar base blue and the Signar light blue.
They have built-in shading,
which is
colors,
very nice.
Yeah,
and I think of the paints, they're the best with coverage, and they don't clump up. Like what I've noticed with GW paints, which I really like a lot too. If you're not careful, you'll get clumps in your brush, and you got to really kind of thin it every once in a while. P3 doesn't seem to have that problem for whatever magic they do. I don't know what it is.
I would disagree because I think it's more the actual tones. Because white does it for me in both P3 and GW.
Maybe it does. I haven't had that problem, but the biggest problem with P3 that I don't like is how you have to buy them because they come in packs, which is fine the first time. But then if you lose your white or you use more of your white, it's hard to buy them singles. So you got to, most hobby stores, your local hobby store probably does not carry P3 in singles.
I thought you almost sound like you said, if you lose your wife, it's hard to get by as a single.
It is. That's true.
That's almost
that's true.
That's very
That's very profound.
That works on many levels.
And a little Freudian. But that is true. That's a true statement. But it's also if you lose your wife.
I guess it depends how you feel about your wife.
I suppose it does. Take my wife, please. No, but it depends if you do. If you lose white or a other color like blue, it's hard to find that color again. In fact, it's very difficult to get the color back. So that's kind of a problem. Yeah. The other problem is and this could be a good bad thing depending on your type of paint pot you like. So the P3 pots are the very old school paint pots. I say old school because I used to paint back in the day when GW was Citadel. I think maybe they still are Citadel, but when they were only called Citadel, you didn't really know they were GW. The paint pot tops work like this. So they pop open, and they've got a little plastic hinge in the back, and they seal really, really well, but eventually paint will build up in the inner rim of the paint pot. It won't close very well unless you take a toothpick and pick out that paint buildup after time.
Or you'll have to
it won't close at all.
Towel.
It won't close at all, and eventually they'll open a little bit and start drying out. Now I've still found these don't dry out as badly as the new bolter shell, I call them, GW paint pots. I've never had if I've cleaned them all out and closed them properly, I've never had them dry out on me. In fact, I still have original Citadel paint pots that have never dried out on me from 1995. So they work great. These paint pots work fine, but you have to treat them with respect and keep them clean.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to bust in a little bit here.
Yeah, jump in.
So I started with the same as you, the GW paint pots. Not the old school, but the bolter. No, they were the twist cap ones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those are the bolter shell ones.
The bolter shell ones, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And what I always hated about it, and let's go back even more. So, Craig, if you're brand new to miniature painting, you've heard us podcast, and you want a miniature paint, have where do you get these paints? Do they come in boxes? Do they come singles, racks? What do you do?
This is your idea of you jumping in on Russ's thing?
Yeah, well, I'm going to
jump in now and have Craig talk.
And then I'm going to jump in on Russ.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you can get if you're going privateer press, as Russ just said, they sell them in sets. So if you're, for instance, collecting Troll Bloods, they have a Troll Blood set, which is actually excellent. I bought it when I was doing my Troll Bloods. It comes with the basic Troll Blood color and the Troll Blood highlight color. It comes with the leather. It comes with a metal. It comes with black and white. So it's actually comes. What is it, Russ? It's like 6 or 9,
I think
or
it's
somewhere in there.
I can't remember now. I can't remember if it's 6 or 9.
It's a lot.
It's a good batch.
It's like 6 or 7 or somewhere in there.
It's a good pack.
It's really
of things,
easy to find, though. How about GW?
Well, at GW, it's been a very long time since I started with GW. GW has a starter kit. And the last time I looked, they had a couple different starter kits depending on whether you're doing fantasy or 40K. And they usually come with 1 or 2 of the cheaper test models, plastic models, and maybe a brush and 9 or 10 paints. And that's a good place to start if you have nothing. But for me, for what you're going to need, in my opinion, you're going to need, if you're looking to pick up 15 to 20 paints to get you started, and you don't want to buy or you don't see the colors that you want in a boxed set, then I think you need like a darker and a lighter shade of red, green, blue, and brown. So there's 8 paints right there. You're going to need black and white, so there's 10. For my technique that I've talked about before, and I think we'll probably talk about again in this little Lost Chapter episode, you need an ivory, or for GW, it's bleached bone. You need a lot of. I go through a lot of that because of my technique. And then I think you should get. You don't need doubles on these. A yellow, maybe an orange if you're planning on doing like any flame effects, or if orange is going to figure into your paint scheme. But you will need a flesh tone. And then a couple metallics.
Did you say 2 greens?
I think 2 greens.
You need 2 greens for the bases.
Now, what's easy about this for people that are brandy new is normally if you go to a large enough type of game store, they'll have a rack. And on that rack with the paints, you'll have your ultramarine blue. I almost used to have these memorized. I can't remember. And then you'll have the lighter blue right before it and the darker blue right after it.
It goes in like a rainbow.
Now, that's what we should say. The best thing about GW paints is almost every store carries them, and they almost always have the rack of individuals.
Yep.
So for singles. So what's great about GW is you can walk, because they're so well carried, your local gaming store, even your Hobby Emporium or Hobbytown USA, those very generic hobby stores, they just have they have those little spinny racks of miniatures, not really a miniature store, they're more of a train store or whatever, but sometimes they'll carry a GW rack of paints because they just do.
Oh, speaking of that, no, not testers.
Yes, I was about to say that.
Testers, yes.
That's where
I don't know.
Is that or is that not where we all started though? Honestly, with D&D minis, everybody.
D&D minis because there was no choice.
Yeah, that's right, and testers because there was no option unless you went into those creepy hobby stores, which when we were a kid you really didn't want to go into.
So let's talk about that now right away. If your first memory is painting some model and it came out like crap, you probably use tester paints. Don't use that as your basis to say, I'm a crappy miniature painter.
That's right.
Well, first of all, you probably did not prime your model.
Probably.
That's true.
That right there was the death knell, because tester paints can be usable. And then the second thing is, yes, tester paints are tough to work with.
Oh, my God.
You're much better off with these acrylic water-based paints that are the modeling paints of the 3 major companies we talked about. There are other brands, too, that are good. But these are the 3 we have the most experience with, so we don't want to speak to ones we don't know well.
Right.
And where I wanted to interrupt Russ was, so you're using your paint pot. How did you guys, what I always hated is when you unscrew the cap, how'd you get the paint out? Because I would always have to use a brush, and then my brush would get all gunky.
Well, see, don't forget, that you're thinking you started with the GW screw top bolter shells.
Yes.
But the generation before that, and the generation that's still P3, Vallejo paints is one thing. You're going to drip them onto a mixing board. The P3 ones, you shake them up, okay?
Yeah.
You should always shake your paint pot thoroughly before painting from it. Never, ever paint directly from a paint pot without shaking it. First rule, because the paint all settles to the bottom, and you're painting with the filler agent. You're not really painting with the pigment. So what you want to do is shake your paint up pot really well. Now, if you open up one of these P3 pots or the older school Citadel pots, what happens is when you open the plastic top and it's on a little hinge, it stays open, and there's this little lip in the back of the lid that is there to catch a little bit of paint.
Yeah.
And so the whole goal of these pots is to get you to paint out of the pots because it's easier. Any professional painter will tell you it's a bad habit because you're ruining your paint, which is probably why they do it, to get you to dry paint and get more paint. But it's actually very, very handy for a newbie painter or someone who just doesn't really care about having to have mixing trays and things for all that. You just pop your paint tops open, and I'd paint right out of the paint pots.
I paint out of the paint top.
Yeah, me too.
I never realized that's what that stupid little lip in the back
what it's
was for.
That's why I like the
pouring
P3s.
It out. It would dribble down the side and
No.
it would waste way more
No.
paint.
That's why I like the
paint right out
P3s
of
because
the
they have
pot.
that too. Now that's why the bolter screw top shells were awful because first of all you had to shake them up, right? Then you unscrew them,
Yep.
and then now what do you do? Because there's a little bit on that bolter shell lid, but it's in two
they
pieces.
were drying out
so
constantly.
You'll either paint right out of the big well of paint, which is bad because you contaminate it when you retouch anything, or you try to dribble it out. When you dribble it out, what happens? It gets in the threads of the paint pot. Then when you screw the lid back on, you don't get a good seal, and then the thing dries out.
Yeah.
In fact, those pots were so bad that this is back when we ran our store, we would get those in shipment in a mega paint set, and someone would buy a mega paint set of, it's been $300, and every paint they make, they open up, and they were leaking right inside there.
Yeah.
Brand new.
Yeah.
And I had a whole mega paint set dry out of me. I was bummed. So
that's why
those are the worst. And the GW's moved away from them, which is good, but that era paint pot was awful, the worst ever.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I switched and use Vallejo, because I was in the bolter shell days, and I started to use the Vallejo. And what people don't like about the Vallejo, I like. So I use the little dropper, and I drop them right in the you call it a mixing board. It's just a little 6-well paint pot. You get them for 99 cents at a hobby store.
Yeah.
Don't go to some fancy art store and pay for a whole big one. You don't need that.
Yeah, Michael sells them for 99 cents.
Right.
What's that?
Yeah.
Michael sells
Yeah,
metal
Michael's.
ones,
You get them
ones.
for 99 cents.
Aluminum. And what you want, don't get a plastic one, kids. Get an aluminum one. Why, Craig, should you get an aluminum one instead of a plastic one?
I use
they-
plastic all the time.
They wash out easier.
Right.
And you can just put them in a
Aluminum
dishwasher.
ones. The aluminum ones. Once the paint dries, you can actually almost push on your finger and it pops right
Yeah.
off.
So does the plastic.
I've had friends also.
Sometimes, but I use plastic right now, and sometimes it does, but sometimes it
The
doesn't.
metallics in particular bond with the plastic in some kind of strange
That's true, actually.
chemical reaction way. It's not pretty.
But what I do is I just let we're talking about the wells now.
Yes.
I just let the paint dry. If it doesn't pop out, I just paint over
Well,
it.
that works, but
That's
eventually you
what
gotta
Russ
do
is
well.
talking about when he says pallet. That's a pallet.
Yeah, if you get a pallet and you get a metal pallet, you can clean it more often, and your 99 cents will go farther.
Yeah.
Which, if you save 99 cents, that's just enough money to buy the next Lost chapter.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Shameless self-promotion there.
Shameless.
If we don't do it, who will?
Right.
But I like that's okay because I've already paid. I like the
For the next one.
Vallejos because exactly what you guys said, and I want to explain to anybody using the Vallejos that they're very well known for the military colors.
Mm-hmm.
But they have an alternate side. This can be very confusing.
Yeah, I know
okay?
what this is actually awesome.
Yeah, you can get, let's say, Stonewall Gray, and in the military side, I don't have the paints in front of me, but it might be called, German Gray. But in the fantasy side, it's called Stonewall Gray, and they could very well be the same gray.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, here's
So you
here's
kinda
why
have
they
to
did
watch
that, though.
that then.
so you kind of have to watch
But
that.
here's why
yes.
I don't know if you knew this, right, but here's why they did that. On the fantasy side, there is an exact color match.
Oh,
for
yeah.
every
Oh,
Games
yeah. This
Workshop
is
color.
beautiful.
And so Games Workshop has a color called Ultramarines Blue.
Correct.
Vallejo has a blue called Ultra Blue.
Blue.
It is the exact same shade in an eyedropper, and it's their paint. So if you were to decide you wanted to switch over, you can find an analogy for every GW color in the Vallejo fantasy range.
Like I did, because that's how
Right.
I switched over.
So that's probably why they have that stone gray or whatever is probably like Space Wolf gray or whatever.
Space Wolf Gray.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And so I do want to warn people that it can be a little bit weird at first because you drop those Vallejo paints and they're very watery. That's part of what Russ was saying when he was like they don't cover as well. It's not because the pigment isn't as good. It's because they start out watery.
You got to shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Right.
Shake it.
And that's why when you use the GW
Where's
or
the backup
PP,
singers? No singers in that one? Come on,
most
where
people,
are you?
Nah, no
What?
singing for you.
Which backup? What?
No singing on the Polaroid picture song reference? Come on now. Really? Seriously?
Shake it like a Polaroid. That.
That was it? Yeah, I had no backup
that's
on
the
that.
one.
That's all I
Wow,
got.
you guys are getting sloppy. I tell you.
Sorry.
The GW paints and
I'm drinking decaf. Didn't I already tell you?
That's right.
I guess
and
you
the
want
PP paints.
to embarrass yourself in Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
You pretty much need water for those.
Shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Look how Rafe just kind of pushes through when we're talking on him. He just won't be stopped. He's like a bulldozer.
Rafe is playing the role of Russ today.
Exactly. Exactly. See, I'm glad Craig noticed. I don't mind the water because don't be disillusioned by it. When you're painting it, it'll dry and it'll cover just fine. Oh, the other reason why I like the droppers.
Wait, because I have a question.
Yep.
So if they're watery, does that mean they don't work well dry brushing? Because watery paint doesn't work well dry brushing.
Not that I've noticed. No, I mean
you have to
dry.
You have to Vallejo dry. I don't like Vallejo for dry brushing at all.
Right.
Because of that, you can use it that way, but you really have to.
You're gonna waste a lot.
Almost
of paint.
let it dry a little bit in the well, and then put on your brush and then really dry it. It just feels like you got to brush more onto the towel to get it to be dry.
Yeah, I think I do brush a bit on the towel, and also I'm a light dry brusher kind of guy. I do subscribe to the theory of multiple dry brushes, not just one.
Right.
Which Vallejo also works pretty good at.
Okay.
The third reason why I like Vallejo is the I do a lot of mixing of my paints. Like my Cador Red is a special, unique blend. The trick to that is I usually... What's that?
It's like a sunrise on a spring morning.
Well,
Nice.
man. Guys
that
are
was pretty good.
you guys are in like goof mode today.
Whatever.
Look who's saying. Look who's talking.
Were we up late last night, the both of you?
Look who's talking too.
Ooh.
Where's Travolta when you need him?
Blending.
Anyway,
so I keep my
blend.
blending pretty simple.
Right.
I usually do like
Yo, I'm a
50%
baby.
50% gory red, and then I'll do 50% blood red, and that's my mixing, so I can remember what it is.
Right.
See, I hate mixing.
Now, when you start a new army, let me ask you this: do you write down the colors you paint your preliminary figures so you don't forget?
No, I used to, but I just am able to remember.
I've started doing that.
I have to do it, and I always tell myself to do it, and I always forget.
I know.
It's an excellent example.
I know, right? And then you go and do a different army, and then you come back and you're like,
especially when you're talking Spartan, okay, especially dystopian wars, you have to do it because when you think about it, you're going to be getting new waves of models. You can't go out like a GW army, go out and get all your models and paint them all at the same time. So, for instance, I painted the FSA fleet, which is great. It came out awesome, and I loved it. And then I went out and I bought another fleet box because I wanted more options.
Right.
And then I just looked at it and went, "Oh crap!"
But wait a minute, you just said you don't mix, so what's the problem? You can't remember the base color you use?
No, I do. I do mix my highlights for my dry brushing.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's not mixing. If I didn't mix it all for all the wooden decks,
Yeah,
if I
you gotta
can't remember which brown I used,
well, I have the
then
same
I'm
problem.
screwed.
I have like 16 shades of brown between my Vallejo, my GW, my P3.
Right. That was my issue.
That's the problem. I just
sometimes
have
I
Vallejo,
wash,
that's
sometimes
it.
I don't. Sometimes I dry brush, sometimes I don't. I got to write down what I did, or I'll forget.
And I did. I picked the wrong brown for my for the decks of my second set of FSA.
They're just from a different theater, different
Well,
kind of
exactly.
salt water.
And the mix of my shading from my dry brushing is different too. So I mean, it's subtle, and you can tell they're all from the same fleet.
Right.
And it's not that big a deal, but I can tell the difference, and I'm frustrated because I like the second set better.
So, Rafe, where were you before Craig so really interrupted you?
I was pretty much done on the reasons why I like the Vallejo paint pots, but Craig led me think of a couple things. If we say things to you dry brushing and highlighting, and that's over your guys' heads, don't despair. I'm going to send you to two sources. Go back and find the one in the D6G. We talk about it. Or I recommend Games Workshops, which I think has the Citadel logo on it. They have a very basic painting guide. A painting book.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm thinking these people have paid for, they've paid for their ride. Maybe we should take a second and explain dry brushing.
Craig,
yeah, okay.
In the style of a one-legged pirate,
one-legged.
please describe dry brushing.
Right. Okay. Well, you're going to be painting with a dry.
Give that man a stick.
All right. So anyway. painting, dry brushing is exactly as it sounds. It's painting with an almost completely dry brush. Mm-hmm. So what you're going to do is you're going to have theoretically a base coat already on there, whether it's your primer or a base color, and you're going to take the color that you want to highlight with, and you're going to very lightly put your brush into it. You're going to have what we've been calling it a towel. Usually it's a paper towel, or I actually prefer a sheet of printer paper. Because the towel actually, to me, takes off too much paint.
Yeah, I like the towel
because it soaks it up.
I've screwed that up for you with Phil.
Yeah, and what you're doing is you're going back and forth lightly on that paper towel, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like the Karate Kid. Okay, until there's almost no more paint on there, and you're just leaving a very, very light shadow of paint each time you do it. And then again, very lightly, you're just brushing the tips of your brush, the tip of your brush on the surface that you're dry brushing, so that just the edge surface pieces are getting lightly touched with that brush, and it's leaving just a shadow of that color on the raised surfaces.
And it's not an exact thing. You're not like picking where you hit it. You're almost like waving the brush over it, a little bit, and you're kind of hitting the highlights. You're letting the model paint itself almost, right? Because you're hitting the peaks of the model. Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening is if you had a black model, you're dry brushing light gray on top of the. This technique is great for painting chainmail, because all of a sudden the upper parts of the chain get brighter and brighter, and the deep holes of the chain stay dark.
Right.
So that's dry brushing.
Yeah. And now 2 pieces of advice. Mm-hmm. First, if you're going to dry brush, you have to clean your models. You can't leave the edges and the flashing and the little lines that
that's good advice.
The mold lines. Yep. If you're going to dry brush a lot, you can't do that. Yep. And second, you have to be aware that you're going to get a real if you do it well, and it doesn't take long to master dry brushing. It's going to take you a few models.
Yeah.
Okay, but once you do it well, it's relatively easy to tell a model that's been dry brushed, and it's going to look awesome. But there are a small percentage of gamers out there that will disparage you for using dry brushing. And it's happened to me on several different occasions.
Well, I think it's a great technique, though. It's a great way
I think it's an awesome technique.
Get really for a new painter to get some great looking models. You really only see that with the upper echelon of painters who are critiquing each other.
Well, the problem is the problem that I've seen is that because dry brushing, you can get a really good look.
Right.
That high level painter that has like a personality flaw or like an inner jealous rage will want to despair. From afar, they see the model, they come over, look at it, and you've both run into this personality type. They have to categorize you why you're lower than they are. So they'll look it up and they'll go, "Oh, you dry brushed."
Oh, you dry brushed.
Right, whatever.
Oh yeah, no, it's pretty good for dry brush. That 4 is a death knell in any arena of social interaction. Oh, it's pretty good for blah blah blah. Oh, that's pretty good for a girl. Oh, that's pretty good for dry brushing. Oh, that's pretty good for a boy. You're not gonna 90% of the time you're not gonna run into that. But if you go into a grand tournament, there will be some asshat that will walk up to you and be like, "Oh yeah, it's dry brushing. Oh, it's okay. It's good for dry brushing."
Look, if you know what dry brushing is, then you already know that. And if you don't be afraid of it for that reason.
No. Don't be. Please don't think I'm saying be afraid. I think it's awesome. I love it. I don't care. You run into the same thing, and again, it's a vast minority, but you run into the same thing with dipping.
Well, it's the same people that made fun of me for having a camo space marine.
Exactly.
Pattern.
These are the guys. These are the guys who don't even like metallic paints. Oh,
they make non-metallic.
Oh, you use pre-made metallics. Yeah, I used to do that, but now I use non-metallic metallic.
Yeah, that's a whole.
Right. Non-metallic metallic doubles the painting time.
Takes me 16 hours to paint a sword blade, but man, it looks awesome. You mean this?
I don't agree.
No,
with
that's
anybody.
GW paints. I'm sorry.
I don't agree with anybody disparaging somebody for dry brushing. I don't agree with that at all.
No, I don't. I'm not.
But hand highlighting is a quote better technique.
Oh no. But, hey, look, we're not. And we're not. Non-metallic metallic's a phenomenal technique.
But people that use non-metallic metallics, that's just a waste of time.
No.
The metallics are totally awesome.
No. Non-metallic metallic. No, don't get this the wrong way.
Yeah.
Non-metallic metallic is a phenomenal technique that cannot be matched in any other way.
I disagree.
True blending is also phenomenal too. But the thing that people have to understand is not everybody can do that or has the time or wherewithal to do it. So. it's okay. The thing is, paint your models for yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to master one of these really, really challenging techniques, go for it and be proud of that, what you did. But also, if you just want to become a competent tabletop gamer painter and you want to rely on the old standbys like two-tone highlighting and base coating and dry brushing, hey, knock your and inks and washes, knock yourself out, man. Make it happen. And then have a good-looking army. And neither of those two sides need to be upset with each other. The tabletop painter can admire the other stuff, and the other guy can say, that's a great-looking army. Impressive job.
Speaking of that, that's a good segue for inks. I'm going to go first.
All right.
Okay, so, I'm not done yet. No, because this has been eating at me for a while now. Because
okay.
I ran
I concede the floor to the Senator Gallant.
There's a do you ever notice in here someplace.
There's a what?
A do you ever notice in here someplace?
I think there is. Absolutely. Because this really bothered. Well, there's a couple things. I've been haunting us. But I'm not going to talk. I'm just explaining that.
Rafe, could you wheel the couch over there in the corner of Dunks over here next to Craig and let him lie down and we'll analyze.
Yeah, exactly. I'm about to kick back. I'm enjoying my ice beverage.
How did you feel about your mother?
No, I love my mother.
Oh,
I just had dinner with my mother.
Excellent.
And anyway, so I've been haunting a couple different forums lately. I mean, I love the Spartan Games forum and of course the DACA forum and a couple other forums too over the past few weeks for a variety of different reasons. And this happened on this forum where it drove me insane, but I know I can't get involved. Both because I don't want, like most people out there, on most forums, I'm Craig from the D6G or I'm just my name, and I don't want to put the D6G out there and be like, you're an asshat. So I just kind of, which is my only option when people act this way. So I just don't say anything usually because I have been sucked into these things with people I've never even met, and it's just awful. So, but
what the heck's been going on?
But very recently on one of the forums, somebody came up and they were like, hey guys, here's the deal. I love painting, but I don't have time anymore. Why do people not like dipping? And immediately 20 or 30 posts. Dipping's fine. You do whatever you want to do to make your models look decent. I will play a dipped army 1,000 times rather than play with somebody who hasn't painted anything. And it was awesome. There's the whole community getting together saying, you know what? There's nothing wrong with dipping. You're still painting your model. You're painting on your paint. We've talked about this a million times.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying in case there's a new thing.
Oh, okay. A good point. I'm sorry. See, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting all agitated. Dipping is when you paint all the base colors on your model and then you dip it in like Minwax.
Yep.
And then you shake most of it off. And basically what happens is it shades the whole model.
It's like the opposite of dry brushing almost. Exactly. It's like super inking. Almost.
It's like super washing. Right. Exactly. And it's relatively easy. That's why at paintedfigs.com it's the cheapest thing you can have them do. But you're still painting. You have to paint the pants one color and the shirt another color and his belt pouch another color and his sword another color. So you're still the flesh and the eyes. You're still doing all that.
And by the way, our friend Shifty, he got
entire Tyranid army that looks beautiful.
He did a little fancier with some of the fancier. There are actually whole paint companies that make different dips and things, and he did some of that. They look phenomenal.
Yep. Well, that's
really
I was thinking
awesome.
of Shifty when I read this.
And the thing about this is, Craig, you're exactly right. The biggest disappointment at a miniature table is not the guy that didn't paint his army like a Golden Demon painter. It's the guy that didn't even prime his army. He's there with metal models with arms falling off.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's what you don't want to see. I'm just like that guy on the forum. I would be happy to play anybody who has put in a good effort and has a table painted of men.
Yeah.
I don't care how we did it.
Right, and that was the overwhelming majority of the posters were like, "Hey, dude, take it easy, relax. Nobody's gonna feel bad just because it's." And then this one guy comes on.
Yeah, well, he's a punk.
I don't believe that you are painted if you are like. How do you even say I don't believe that you are painted if you are dipped? Like, and then all these people are like, "Dude, how could you even say that? He's got to paint him." It's not the same thing at all. It doesn't count. Like. I felt like I was dealing with Karen. Like, why doesn't it count? Like, because you've decided that it doesn't count. It does. Like, I'm sorry that I don't have Golden Demon painting quality time anymore. I don't have it. And luckily for me, I could hit him over the head with my Golden Demon and say, "See, I did have it at one time."
Wow, Russ, I'm not sure, but I think he just compared his wife to an internet troll.
No, I did not.
I think he did.
Everybody knows Karen used to play those games and say, "This one doesn't count," and come up with reasons that they didn't count. Okay. Thanks for trying to derail me, though.
I'm off that. I didn't comment.
I was trying to get Russ's back and let him jump on the bandwagon.
No, I was being good.
Jump.
I was being good.
All right, thanks. I appreciate that, Russ.
See how that works?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And anyway, so I just want people to know, like, don't get discouraged when you go out there and you're like, look, I dry brush my models and they look awesome, and there's one guy who's going to be like, I don't really consider that paint. I mean, for me, and now I'm going to get all personal, right? Okay. Deep thoughts with Craig Galan. Because it was a tournament a GW tournament that I went to, and I went with my Tau army, which I think looks very good.
It does.
Okay, and there is some dry brushing in that, but there's also a lot of freehand camo and lots of. I mean, pretty much whenever I make a plastic army, almost every model is custom. You know,
your conversions are crazy, right?
Converted in some way. And literally, I didn't make the first cut for Best Painted Army, even though, in my considered opinion, I was one of the best. I didn't make the first cut because literally the two judges came over, looked at it, and went, "Oh, this is all dry brushed," and walked away. Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Wow, that hurts," because it's not like you're not painting. So it's a totally valid tactic or technique, and do it. Use it and be proud of the way that your models work. But all over the Spartan Games forums, I'm getting excellent feedback on my FSA fleet, and they're all dry brushed. So
here's my analogy for this. Okay, it doesn't matter what technique you use as long as you like the end result.
Yes,
and all of it is art. It's like someone saying, you know what? Oh, it's an impressionist. That's not art.
Right.
I only like realists, and an impressionist is not art. It's too easy to do. I'm not going to do it. So it's not. No, that's BS. It's just whatever technique works for you. Whatever you like.
That's a totally
for your
valid analogy, except for modern art.
Well,
modern art's crap.
Well, but define modern art. Does modern art that's cool?
I'm kidding. I'm just trying to be all light and happy and fluffy over here.
No, I just want people to know that if they have a dipped army, I'm not playing it because they're freaking lame.
All right.
Yeah, see, that's what the guy was saying.
If they have a dipped army, I respect them because there were power tools involved. There was splatter on the walls. Exactly. There was a wife going, "Don't bring that crap in here." That is some serious
hardcore
effort.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've ever dipped 100 Tyranids, as we say in IT, it is a non-trivial task. Okay, to not end up with a bunch of globby dudes. Okay.
See, I'll tell you what I'm a little intimidated by the dipping method is that flicking part.
Yeah, you got to get it off. And you got to not get it on yourself, your floor, your rug, your walls. So you're out in the garage. It's like 30 degrees. You're freezing your buds off. You're trying to dip the models. And then a guy comes up and says, "You didn't put any time into your army." Well, hit the road, Jack. So anyway.
Yeah,
you know what? That segues awesome into I wanted to talk about washes.
Yeah, look at how you stole his segue. I love it.
Before washes, Russ alluded to this.
By the way, if you have a new nickname, it's the Segway Killer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you've slain more segues in the show.
Actually, Craig just slayed the last one.
Actually, that was a joke segue because Rafe tried it. And
No, but I mean, seriously, if you go back and listen to the show, just count the number of segues he's killed. He's like,
That's why. Because I never get a chance to talk.
We could sound like professionals, and then there's from the grassy knoll, Rafe with
those poor two-wheeled vehicles just blowing up left and right. It's
just because I never get a chance to talk, so I just kill the segue.
Yeah.
All right. So
if I can't have her, no man shall.
Right.
So Russ alluded to it, but there is the professional brand of dipping, which I think is Army Painter. So if you're sitting there going, "Ooh, I want to do that,"
what Russ
dipping
was
method.
doing was not mentioning somebody who's not our sponsor, but that's okay.
Right. That's exactly what Russ was doing.
I'm all about the love. Maybe they'll want to be our sponsor now.
I'm
all about the pay me first.
These people want
Jeez. But you also can Google for free on dipping.
You can,
and then it'll teach you how to do the min-wax.
No, Army Painter's a fine product. Actually, I've used some of their stuff. In fact, on the show, I've talked about it many times. Their primers. I really like their primers a lot.
Yeah. All right. Ink washes.
Okay. Now we have no
washes. Inks and washes. They're two different things, really.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. An ink has more pigment to it.
Yes.
I don't believe
And a wash is more watery.
But GW's pulled back. Hasn't GW kind of pulled back on the wash line and made them all inks or something?
No, vice versa.
Oh, the other way around? Okay.
They used to do inks and washes, and then they just did washes, and now they just do washes.
So you're saying at some point in time there was a black ink, and then there was a black wash?
Yes.
I not only am I saying that, but within 10 feet of where I'm sitting right now, I can go get you a black ink and a black wash.
Yeah, the Mega Paint set.
Show you how they're different.
In the Mega Paint set, they have inks and washes.
Yeah.
One way you can tell is that one of them has that little insert from the cap coming down, and one doesn't.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe you. I take it at your word. I just had no idea.
Yeah.
All right.
And
so,
I used to prefer the black ink because what that does is it leaves your true color behind for the most part, although it's darker, and blackens in the recesses.
Mm-hmm.
But now I love black wash because what it does is it dulls down the whole thing and makes it look more realistic while also coloring in the recesses.
Great for weathering.
Yeah.
So what inks and washes do is they're sort of the opposite of dry brushing, right? So their job is to be all liquidy and all very thin, almost like super thinned up Vallejo paints. And they run into the model's nooks and crannies like an English muffin, and they get in there.
Gross.
So imagine. So here's what I would do to paint some chainmail, right? So first I would base coat it like a dark or a gray, medium gray. Then what you can do is, if you want, is you can hit one coat of dry brushing with a lighter color, like a silver or a lighter metallic, and that'll make it look like it's got high gray and low gray. Then you hit it with like a black wash. And what happens is the wash dulls down the silver a little bit and gets into the nooks and crannies and makes it really dark, but there's not enough paint in there to make it totally black. So when it dries out, it's just darker of the color you had. And then if you want to make it really shiny chainmail, you can hit it with one more lighter dry brush, and then the peaks will be a little shinier, right? But that's how inks work, right? Now, the challenge with inks and washes is that the ink's a little different. Like what I use inks for is like black lining and stuff. Because what's black lining? Well, black lining happens when you prime a model or something of a base color that's not black, but you need the seams to be black. So let's say you decided that your Space Marine model is going to be a very bright color like yellow. So you prime him white and then paint him yellow. The problem is all those little seams in his shoulder blades and the seams on his armor plates really should be dark or maybe black. So you go through with a very, very fine brush and paint little dark lines. And inks I like for this because they're easy to keep a little bit on the brush and run through there. They don't make it pitch black, but they give it a nice little line. And that's so inks are sort of like a very, very smooth flowing paint, really. Is that how you use inks, Craig? That's kind of how I do them.
Yeah. Yep.
And then that's really the beauty of the two things. So you're really able to either get a really smooth liquid in there, or you're able to, with a wash, it literally is the opposite of dry brushing. You're still coating the entire area, but instead of getting a very dry brush, you almost have a very wet brush that kind of gets everything sopping. Then it dries. You have to let it dry for a while, though. So when you're washing, this is one of those places where you want to be doing multiple models at a time. Because when you wash a guy, you really can't paint anywhere near where the wash is on the model for a while. So you got to come back to him and do 6.
I have a trick for that.
Yeah?
Hair dryer.
If you want to waste electricity, sure. Kill the planet, kill some birds, make all the swallows die. That's fine. If that's the way kind of guy you are.
But my model gets done.
Okay, well, as long as we're on the same page. Do you leave the faucet running in the bathroom too while you're doing it, just so the brush will stay clean?
No, I don't do that. But what I was thinking is, if I had a sheep, like a real live sheep, I could dry it off on the sheep wool.
Okay.
But I don't have a sheep.
So that's washes and inks, and I think that GW in particular really is the only kind of go-to for really, really good. I know P3 has some, but they're hard to find. I haven't actually tried them before. But GWs, I don't think Vallejo has any. Does Vallejo have any in their line? I don't think they do.
No, they do. I don't like them at all. I am a 100% a convert of not even convert. I've only used GW, I guess, before they were inks, and now I use their washes, which comes in a box set. And they're expensive, but they're worth every penny.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing that GW does extremely well, I want to say this before I forget, is their metallics. So they have, I think, probably the best metallic range of any company. In particular, everybody's got some kind of iron-looking and silver, mithril color things that you can go with the metallics. But their coppers are phenomenal, going from tin bits through dwarf bronze and all those colors. You can make, especially for doing things like dystopian wars and steampunk, because you really want a lot of bronze in there. I used to use it all the time in my orcs. All my orcs metals are all these coppery tones and bronze tones.
And tin bits.
And tin bits, And those colors work great in dystopian wars, or also on War Machine, on the big boilers and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think the P3 line really has... They have, brass balls and some other colors, but they're not quite the same. I don't really like them as much. So I really like... And they don't separate... for some reason, I don't know how GW does it, but their metallics don't separate brutally like the P3 ones do. The P3 metallics really separate over time, and you got to really shake them like crazy. So for metallics and for washes, there is no choice. I would say Games Workshop is the only game in town.
Yep. Well, I do like the Vallejo inks are also very good, and what's nice about them is since they're a little bit more liquidy, they don't dry out as much.
Didn't you just say you hate them?
He did. He did just say he hated them.
The inks. I like the Vallejo metallics.
Oh, I'm so confused. Okay, so you like the Vallejo metallics? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, you don't like their inks? Okay, good.
Right.
Phew.
Okay.
I was confused
Gotcha.
there. All right.
But a little trick I learned with the inks is, the metallics.
Okay,
excuse
good.
me,
Whew.
is I drop a few drops of black in any metallics that I'm doing, and then mixing it up, and it makes a really dirty looking metallic. And then you use your base coat is just a regular metallic, and it really shines it up nicely. And then you just pop it with the next level up metallic, and it does a really nice quick effect.
Gotcha.
That's very cool.
Especially with a brown wash or a black wash over it. It really makes that metal look really good.
Now, speaking of color, this just in off the D6G news feed. The Warhammer Fantasy Orcs and Goblin Army book just went up for pre-order. It's available in March.
Yeah.
And Russ, it is full color.
I saw that. Someone tweeted that to me. It's hardcover, full color.
It's hardcover?
There's a
You
hardcover
sure about
variant.
that?
Someone tweeted me about that. Yeah, hardcover. That's what they tweeted me. Is that really what happened? Go to the website. Check it out.
I am. This 112-page full color. Oh, hardback Warhammer.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh.
Bam!
All new artwork,
What
too.
do they charge for that baby?
$37.25.
That's it?
That's actually not bad for hardcover.
For hardcover, yeah.
It's not bad. How many pages is it?
112. That's a
They've
big...
been listening to me. Hardcover, full color, new artwork. Oh, GW, you care. Now I got to check that out. I got to look at it.
And one of the new releases is a plastic spider monster.
I saw that. It looks phenomenal. Have you seen that? All the little guys
Yeah.
hanging on there? Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what's that model called that the Blood Angels now have out? Stormwind? But you guys were telling me that the actual model is not as good as the picture.
It looks good coming, but not going. You know what I'm saying?
I just think it looks kind of silly. It looks like somebody was like, I really, 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 really want to design a Thunderhawk, but they won't let me. So I'm going to design this little tiny thing that'll fit in a Land Raider box.
It looks like a Thunderhawk escape pod.
Yeah.
Quick, launch the escape pod. And the front flies off, and that's all you get.
So
anyway,
it's that bad, huh?
No, it's not. I don't know.
No, it's not bad,
It's
but
not
I think
awful.
that-
It's just not. It's no Valkyrie. Let's put it that way.
right.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's no Falcon Grav tank. It's no Land Raider. No, but I'm not going to play fantasy or anything tomorrow. But that is a cool book, and that model, that spider model, is awesome.
It is beautiful.
Awesome. So
But anyway, okay, back to paints.
Yeah. So we have Dunks is going to close on us here in a little bit. So what do you think? Ray, do we miss anything on paint pots, or should we get Craig to kick us some good dystopian tips before we bail here?
Yeah, I think we covered paint pots, army, painter, dipping.
Wow.
I didn't
Models.
I must have stepped away
Inks,
from that.
washes. Oh, paintbrushes. Real quick. I don't like to use the ones from Michaels. Do you guys use the ones from art stores in Michaels?
No, I never
Me
have.
neither.
Sometimes
Me neither.
I do have some.
I don't
use
because I don't have a bias. I use.
There's one kind of brush I go outside the hobby range for.
Oh yeah, what's that?
I like the hobby brushes mostly. I like. I have some Games Workshop brushes. I have some of the P3 brushes. They're about the same to me. I don't know that one's better than the other. There's for painting really fine lines. I don't think there's a hobby brush like this, but at art stores you can find extremely thin, like 000 brushes, but they're long bristles, like maybe an inch long, inch and a half long. And they're very, very long, but they're very thin. And what's interesting about these is they hold a good amount of paint, but they stay fine, and they're great for black lining because they're very, very thin. The problem with really, really short, fine brushes, they hold no paint. And so you have to keep going and go back to the pot all the time. And for a long black line, if you're trying to, like, let's say you're holding a model in one hand, you got the palm of your hand with a brush against the model, and you're trying to run a nice long, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 inch line. What I found with really short brushes, they run out of paint. You got to go back to the pot. Now you've lost sort of your thing. But these long bristle ones are holding enough paint. We can actually run almost the length of like a Thunderhawk, and you don't run out. So that's the only real brush I would go outside the normal range for. The rest of them are fine.
Mine are easy. I use the Vallejo 0, 1, and 2 brushes that you actually get in the you can get with the Flames of War kit. So they come in a little green box. They'll say Flames of War on them, and they have the 3 brushes. Those are the ones I use.
Yeah.
I use some GW. I'm a brush hoe. I'll just use whatever brush is available.
That's true. You will actually.
I totally will. I have lots of GW ones. I went and when Army Painter first came on with their line of brushes, I went and got a bunch of them because I think they were mispriced actually, and they were really cheap, and they weren't nearly as cheap the next time I stopped by. But I picked them up because they were cheap.
99 cents.
And no, they weren't that cheap, but they weren't Ralgard frigate cheap. That's for sure.
Nice.
But they were cheap. And the problem is, of the 4 that I got, the 3 of them failed me utterly, and just failed to keep a point at all. And they're not hefty enough to dry brush, and they don't have a point now. So there's really no way that you can area brush with them. So they were really a failure. But one, the zero, I think it's either 0 or 01 that I got, is beautiful, and I've been using it for literally over 6 months now.
Holy cow!
In every project that I've been doing, and it still has a beautiful chisel point.
Nice.
It's a white bristles, so you can and the white. Normally, when you use white bristles, they eventually will leach into the color will leach into them, and you'll lose the benefit, which is really, I mean, the benefit is negligible. Some people like it, some people don't.
Right.
I, again, don't have an opinion either way, although it's neat to have them because you can kind of tell where the paint stops.
Right.
But this, for some reason, it keeps its white color, and it's keeping its tip, and it's beautiful. It's awesome. So although my luck has been very, very bad for the most part with the Army Painter brushes, that one brush that I have is beautiful. I love it. And I'm also like I'm the rogue trader when it comes to tank brushes, GW tank brushes that they don't make anymore.
Yeah, in fact, here's the other thing: tank brushes are awesome, and don't make the same mistake I did. So we're just talking about 000 brushes and really, really fine points, and those are important. But it's also good to have a nice set of mid-range brushes for dry brushing different size models, like the tank brush, which, for those that don't know, is this very, very large dry brush. And the difference between a dry brush and a regular brush is the dry brush is designed to have its bristles sort of spread out, almost like a makeup brush that women use. In fact, if you can steal your wife's makeup brush, those little ones they use in their cheeks, grab one of those. Those are awesome dry brushes. But they're A, expensive, and B, your wife will kill you. So, But if she's got
I don't even use a dry brush.
If she's got,
I use whatever brush, 0, 1, or 2 that I need for the space.
But the problem with that is it'll eventually ruin the brush unless you
It's not good for your brush.
It does. It does ruin them.
But if you use the dry brushes have a more broader head, the tank brush is a very, very large dry brush, and it's great for when it says tanks, it means like the big GW tank kits. It's great for that. It's not so good for small models. So we have a nice range for those. You would never use a tank brush on a Dystopian Wars model. You have to have a much smaller dry brush for that. But GW makes a nice range of them.
We'll talk about that in a moment. But the key is though that they don't make the tank brush anymore.
Right? No, they don't.
So you have to. They don't. So you have to find it. I think Rafe Rafe? Did I call you from Maine a year ago?
Yep.
Yeah. Rafe was looking everywhere. We were all looking everywhere. We couldn't find them. And I found 2 in like this game store in Maine, like in the back of this dusty little corner of this very nice game store, but dusty little corner. And I called Rafe from there. I'm like, Rafe, they're $10 a piece. I'm picking myself up one. You want one? And he's like, yes, get it for me. And
I still have it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, guess what I found in the disposable, discount bin over at the Hobbytown 3 doors down from Miriam.
Ooh.
Yeah, for $6 I found a tank.
Nice.
Wow.
Those are great.
So I've actually got a stockpiling of unused tank brushes. Someday I'll just paint an entire Imperial Guard tank army.
There you go. Yeah, they're awesome. I like those a lot. And I have a nice range of dry brushes.
So, unfortunately, as far as we know, we don't have a place to send you, listeners out there, to get a tank brush if you can't find it.
Let me say this, though. Don't skimp on brushes.
No.
I went and I found, I went to some art store, and they had big tank brush-looking brushes that were like $3 or $2. I'm like, oh, that's great. $2 for a tank brush. It was exact same size and shape as GW. So I'm like, I'll get it.
Yeah.
The bristles kept falling out. Yeah. Like literally the bristles fall out. And the problem with that is, of course, they get in your model and they get in your paint pots. And like, and I threw it away. Like I used it on half a model and I threw it away.
Right. Because you really the dry brushes are taking a beating when you're using them.
So if you're going to skimp someplace, the brush is not the place to skimp. Mm-hmm. That's where you want to have a good
Actually, I would argue none of the elements for painting. You'll just get frustrated and won't like it.
You will.
Right.
Like you're better off getting less paint.
Fewer colors,
Fewer colors.
Right, and mixing more, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
agree
If
also.
you're starting out, get yourself a couple good brushes and just narrow down the paint. The way you can do that is plan ahead of time exactly what you want to paint your model. And then instead of getting, the what did I say? Like instead of getting a brown and a red and a green and a blue and two different shades, just pick one of those, and that's going to be because what you want to do when you're painting to make your model really pop, you want to have one basic color that's going to be the driving color palette.
Right.
So the uniform is going to be basically green, or it's going to be basically red, or it's going to be basically blue, and then you've got brown for some leather, metallic for some metal, flesh for the face, black and white to shade things up a little bit, and then a wash to give it some shading, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and don't quit on yourselves when you're looking at your model and you haven't inked it yet. The model's going to look flat and not that vibrant, and it's going to look not that good. You're going to be like, man, see, I stink at this. You don't. Do an ink wash first, and you have to let that dry. And you'll see that it'll soften the paint edges just enough, assuming that you were careful and you didn't paint like the tunic onto the belt.
Yeah.
It's not going to make that disappear.
That's good advice. If you goof up and over ink, just dry brush to correct. If you over dry brush, ink to correct. It's very simple.
Right.
Yeah. That's a very good tip. Because believe it or not, you can over dry brush, and then you're like,
yeah. If it gets too light, you're like, it's too light. Don't redo the whole thing. Just hit it with an ink. A really good wash that I like a lot. Craig mentioned black, but a brown wash makes anything look a little dirty. Right. So if you dry brush the guy's arm and you love the shading, but it's too bright, he looks too like right out of the shop. Just hit him with a lighter shade of wash, like almost a flush wash, and boom, it gives him a little dirt look, a little grubbery, but you still have all the shading in there. It looks great.
Yep. I go through brown and black washes 3 times faster than any other color.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me too. I don't know. Is the Dunkin' Donuts closing?
We might have to save. We got like 5 minutes.
We might have to save. Oh, we do have time. Painting micro-sized models.
5 minutes before they close. They're putting
dry brushing and washing.
Can I get one more coffee before you close the register? Thank you.
Craig
dry
can't
brushing.
talk about painting dystopian wars in 5 minutes. It's
dry brushing
impossible.
and washing. It's all about dry brushing and washing.
He's right, actually.
Give him room.
Firstly, here's the deal. You're going to get your box fleet, wash the whole thing because they do use an agent for a release agent, and that
when you say wash, you don't mean the ink wash. You mean wash with soap.
Right. Spartan Games is actually really good, and I've never really had a lot of problems with Spartan Games. So either they're not using a release agent because of something else they're doing, or their release agent is maybe biodegradable and it's not as much of an issue. But other companies, you have to wash their models because paint won't stick to them because they have a release agent that they put into the mold so that the model will pop out of the mold easier.
Yeah, I've never had that problem with Spartan. I just paint around the top.
That's what I'm saying.
It's weird.
I was religious about washing my Spartan models, and then I got super excited with the second fleet box, and I just painted it, and I hadn't having any problem.
Right.
And then of course I'm beating my head, going, I can't believe I wasted all that time. But most other companies' resin, you really have to wash,
especially Forge World.
Right. So you're washing or you're not washing either way. So what you're going to look at is you've got your stuff. You're going to prime it. If you're me, you're going to prime it black, unless you know for a fact that the majority of that model is going to be a light color like my Space Wolves. But other than that, you're going to paint it. You're going to dry brush it black. If you're me, again, you're going to take that ivory or the bleached bone color, and you're going to do a very light dry brush over that entire model. And what that's going to do, especially with Spartan Games models, it's going to pick out all the detail. And from that point, you're just doing paint by number almost, because all of the wood planks are outlined for you, and the metal armor sections are outlined for you, and the weapons are outlined for you, and the windows are outlined for you. The whole thing is just really beautifully lined. So then you're just painting in the different areas with the different colors. And if you use a watered down paint, it's actually going to already go on looking shaded because you've shaded it with the bleached bone.
Right.
And that's basically what I did. I dry brushed this is what I did for my thing. I dry brushed. I'm looking at the battleship. I dry brushed the battleship with bleached bone, and then I did it the rest of the fleet. And then I took my model, which I think is camo green, my basic paint color, and I dry brushed the entire thing again, making sure that I covered all of the bleached bone. So it's shading a little bit because there are areas that are lighter now because it has bleached bone in it, and those are going to be lighter with the camo green on it. And then I started mixing my shade up using Space Wolf Gray. And so I did 50-50, and I dry brushed again lighter now. So most of the green is still there, but it's lighter by 50% over the higher areas. Then I cut in another 50% gray, so it's only 25% green. And I did it again. And now the higher areas, the raised areas, are actually turning to a light green, fading into gray. And then I did it one more time with just Space Wolf Gray, just to outline everything. And then literally all I then had to do is go back and paint the wood planks. And that was, again, because it was all dry brushing, there was still all the black from the primer is outlining every board on the top.
That's why you prime in black, in my opinion, especially if you're new.
Yeah, right.
The recesses are all still dark.
Saves you the black lining. Yep, exactly.
Exactly.
Yep.
So then what I'm doing is I'm not really dry brushing, but I'm using a very small, that really small Army Painter model brush that I talked about, and I'm going over each individual board. But again, if you angle your brush just a little bit, it's not even going to go into the corner, into the crevices if you skip a bit. So I'm painting all that brown, and then I did a really light dry brush with a very small brush, bleached bone, to give it kind of a worn look with the wood. And then I painted all of the guns and weapons metal. Mm-hmm. And then I painted the windows with a very, 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 very light blue. Mm-hmm. And I painted all of my tanks and smokestacks and everything with bronze or brass. I think it was bronze, whichever is darker. And then my entire model was painted. There wasn't a single surface that now didn't have its paint on it. And then I went back over. I didn't wash the armor sections because I wanted them to be that dull green gray. I washed all the metal with black. So now instead of just being metal, I mean, the detail just pops out with the black wash. I mean, it's beautiful. And I washed all of the bronze or the copper, whichever one it was. And then I washed all of the windows. And washing the windows is amazing because they're way too tiny for you to get. I mean, I can do like the GW gem effect, where it fades dark and light at the top and the bottom, and then there's a little point of light. Yep. I can do that, but not on these tiny little windows. That's just crazy, unless you're getting a microscope and you're doing it. But you know what? If you do a little dab of blue paint, and it'll just go right in there because these models are so amazingly beautiful that the detail is built into the model, so the paint's going to stay in that little window as long as you're careful. Then you hit it with a little blue ink or a little blue wash. Yep. That's going to go to the edges, and all of a sudden it looks like a shaded glass window. Mm-hmm. And that's what you do.
Little trick.
I mean, literally, I think it took 2 days to paint this entire thing, and then you have to go over and your unit insignias and your faction symbols and everything. But as far as the basics go, literally two days and a day. By a day, I mean usually nowadays I'm lucky if I get like two unbroken hours of painting in. So 4 hours total, and you've got that entire fleet box painted except for your detail insignia.
Now, here's the irony for new painters. It's even though that what Craig just said sounds complicated, I find it's easier to paint the smaller size models like Flames of War or Dystopian Wars than it is to paint a Warjack. Oh, yeah. And the reason for that is, and we'll see if Russ and Craig agree, I think they do, is that painting large, flat surfaces is actually very challenging.
Agreed.
Versus if a lot of detail is crammed into one place, it's like Craig said, you're really just painting by numbers, and dry brushing and ink washing, and your whole model's going to pop.
Bigger's harder. In fact, I noticed this for reals when the old game Inquisitor came out. When GW released Inquisitor, they had the very large models. Remember those?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know, what was the scale on those, Craig? 54?
I think it was 54 millimeter.
54 millimeter, they're really tall. So think of these really tall, like almost, like showcase piece size. And there's so much cloak to paint. It's so hard not to show brush strokes and to really get it smooth looking. And you got to go to the layered painting, and you got to really pull the techniques out of the box. And I came out with some models I was really proud of, but man, was it a lot of work.
Yeah.
Smaller is definitely easier, and it's ironic because most people think smaller is harder. It's not. Right. The opposite is true. Yeah. Smaller is easier to paint. So definitely, I agree with you totally on that, Rafe.
Yeah. So if you've been listening to us and you're totally jonesing for Dystopian Wars, and you're like, I do want to try this painting, do it. That's the army to do it on, or Flames of War.
It's a good starter.
Or Epic.
Yeah.
Vehicles
and
are a great
I've
place to
said it.
start.
I've said this before. I have never painted models that have rewarded my efforts more than the Dystopian Wars models.
Yeah, they're phenomenal.
Just because
that's very true.
Because the detail and it's because it's all the CAD work.
Yeah.
Because a human being could simply not put in some of the detail that you're seeing because it's all extrapolated and cut and pasted using CAD. There's and that's actually almost frustrating also because you can see the detail, but there's no way you can get an angle on a brush in there. So that's
right.
again
So you
why
just hit
the
it with
dry
a wash
brushing is right.
or a dry brush, like you said.
And that's why it's really important because there are hatches and doorways and ladders that you're never going to be able to hit flat on, straight on with a brush to paint them, to detail them. So you're dry brushing and it still looks beautiful.
Well, the thing to remember too is
beautiful.
the most intimidating thing for new painters is actually painting faces.
Yeah.
And the greatest part about Spartan games is there's no faces.
That's right.
So it's a great game system to get into and try. If you've never tried painting before, a vehicle-based game like Spartan Games is a great way to start because they are much, much easier to paint for new painters than people with faces and hair and
absolutely
and all that stuff, and eyes.
Yeah,
so definitely
half the reason I went and got another fleet box was literally because I so enjoyed painting them. I may pick up a whole new fleet now just because I love painting these models.
Dude, the land models are coming out like soon.
I know, but so is the squid.
I know the squid. You're getting drawn to Japan just for the squid?
Oh, I don't know. The
Come
Ripper
to the dark
submarine
side.
looks awesome too.
Join the Empress.
As does the ginormous Prussian robot.
I know.
I want to see the squid and Survive.
There you go.
All right. Well, I think we got to bail, guys. Dunk's going to kick us out here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's just like a real gaming night, actually.
Yeah. The big guy
That's
behind
what
the
they do.
counter
They
is
kick
getting
us out.
ticked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to have to ask you to go. Yeah, but you close at 11 and it's 10:18. Oh, sorry. I just got the call from the manager.
Yeah,
BS.
Right.
Bull crap. But what are you going to call
What are you going to do?
the chubby little kid behind the counter a liar? No, you got to just smile and leave.
I like to call that little 800 number on the door that says, if you have any comments or concerns, call our 800 number at Dunkin' Donuts.
I'm concerned there's a typo on your hours posted on your door.
Right. The store here, and what's the store number, sir? Blah, blah, blah. Well, we'll go around it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll be putting a Dunkin' Donuts out of business, and hopefully you guys will listen to our next episode.
There you go. There you
Thanks
go.
for purchasing Lost Chapter.
Hope the painting advice helped.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.